Our first speaker for the day is going to be Mr. Keith Roberson. He's an associate professor in the Department of Arts in FSU's College of Fine Arts, and he's going to be sharing with us information about generative art and its impacts.
All right, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to speak about AI in the arts. It's a really exciting time, I think, for artists, and especially considering the new tools and technologies that AI is bringing. I'm teaching a class this semester called AI in the Studio, and the students are using experimental approaches to explore lots of different tools and things and how they might integrate them into their workflows. So I have some examples of those that I can show you later if you have any interest in seeing some of those experiments from the students, which are pretty exciting. For instance, some of the ones I found most exciting are where a student might just do a really rough, quick sketch and feed that in as an image input, and then come out with possibilities of what that sketch might become. And that is a way of making art that is really new. Be able to start from just a sketch and get something very detailed out, usually using the text-to-image generators, which hopefully you guys have had the chance to experiment with some. For my presentation, I just have a few short points I want to make, really, a few disorganized points. And I want to open up most of my time for your questions and things. So please go ahead and start thinking about what questions that you might pose to me. As an artist, I'm a technophile. For 40-ish years, I've been making art with different kinds of technology. And I've been drawn to technology as a genre because of its ability to do things unexpected, new kinds of insights, new abilities to tell stories. I love the quote, you guys probably know this one from Arthur C. Clarke, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And that kind of tool is really crucial to be able to tell powerful art. But there are artists out there who want their work included in training. And people made the comment that he thought that AI simulation of his bodies of work posed a kind of immortality for his own brain. The ability to have thousands of art included in that training data means that artists could reference people, what kinds of artworks he might long after. That's an interesting concept to think about in terms of what AI and large models might contribute. So I don't know, that's most of my main points. I want to leave lots of time and respond to you guys' arguments. We have some time for some other things. So number one, and this video is some of my early experiments that I actually did through social media to get basically in helping to establish a community of AI artists. Sadly, this community was on. So that community has moved on. But these are some examples of my early experiments in trying different kinds of prompt engineering strategies. Things that would use other kinds of imaging. This one is like a damaged historic photographs of hiking in winter mountains. And so some of these are trying to combine ambiguous prompts with more specific kinds of prompts, particularly something like what kind of image generation, kind of media, but then also giving it poetic elements. And these are some of the ones that I got the best response to, generally because they included some of the results that came from more ambiguous and poetic kinds of prompt engineering. Negative prompt engineering is something that we hear about too. The ability to not just describe what you're looking for as an art, but to remove things that you don't like. So there's a whole interesting area of concept to explore there, where you might pose an image, pose for it to make an image portrait of a president, but then to use negative prompts to remove all the elements of what portrait might be. What are you left with? And so there's some interesting ways that you can use prompt engineering to explore new conceptual territories of art. I think this was something like spiders in cabins in the woods with rain clouds of spiders. Yes, some of my experiments. I'll open up the floor to you guys. Any particular questions, or what can I address for you guys? What are y'all's interests in art and AI? Yes, sir. I'm sorry, can you repeat? Well, yes, because it's easier to create them, that it might pose, that it might do what with art? Reduce the value of art. It certainly reduces the effort it takes to achieve something that could be interesting. In that way, I think it might pose something to artists that they really need to find their own styles and to pursue. Like, that's something that we teach in the art department, is that BFA students and MFA students, they create an artwork that's different, that's unique in how they approach it and the look of that work. So for those reasons, I think it's going to push more artists to establish a unique view of what kinds of art that they might make that might not be achievable in these kinds of networks. Yeah, it certainly makes it easy to get something that's very interesting, but why that thing is interesting is the next question. What can you do with that? A novice using AI tools, and generally that if you play around with it, that's exploring creativity, it's just playing. You might find something that you really like, but what can you do with that image? If it's just an image that stands on its own, there's little that it can accomplish. Yes. Yeah, the experimental nature of this class and the students' use is mostly using the tools that are out there, just because there's so many. And a lot of the class was just talking about what's new almost every week. And we would see new tools. So a lot of that class was just experimenting with what came out. We did have some students that explored making their own training data based off, one student created it off of their own works and did a series of works based off of new works that were only their own. And that was certain. So it's getting a lot easier to make the training data because we're seeing models that can be built on much fewer examples. So for those, I think that's going to get a lot easier for artists to work those tools. And that's the other thing that's changed a lot. Or there's the ability for artists to get access or to be able to create AI models, training data, to be able to feed it those things has gotten a lot easier. So as that, I think it's that advancing, you're going to see a lot of that. Yes, sir. Yeah, that's a big question. Certainly a lot of artists don't, like, as I mentioned, a lot of artists don't want their works included. So things. And I think there certainly is an ethical implication that those who build the training data need to have permission from artists in order to do those things. But in a larger sense, it does create a much easier way for all kinds of artists to make work that looks like other artists. But we see this, it's an ongoing genre in music and in art, the mashup culture. If you think about mashup genre and the ability to put two artists' works together, or to have, particularly with like an adversarial GAN network, to have two artists fight it out in terms of coming to a conclusion, starts some kind of interesting territory that works through the mashup genre. Yes, sir. Yeah, well, copyright is always like decades behind the ethics. The current situation with copyright is that it has to be a human creator in order to have copyright. So an AI system, and you just putting in, like I can put in many of these works because I just generated them from text inputs, and I did not alter them much or at all. Some of these cases, these are not copyrightable. Because you could use the same model and type in the same text prompt and get the same result. But the Copyright Office does see that as long as the artist has a certain amount of input, for instance, if you start with your own sketch or you start with your own photograph, that work is copyrightable. In my own case, I've never copyrighted my own work. In fact, all of my artwork is Creative Commons attribution licensed, so that anybody in the future or now can use my work and build on it, or use it, mash up styles or anything that they want to, as long as they give me attribution for that work. And with social media, that may be enough. These days, copyright mostly just protects corporations and companies. It doesn't really protect the artists that much. But with attribution, as long as the artist is given attribution for the work, then if it goes viral, people are going to see that attribution and go to that artist and recognize it. So it's going to, that benefits the artist probably more greatly. If you look at the studies, similar to how piracy of video games or movies has worked. It's like when a great movie gets pirated, there's enough interest generated that it actually is a very positive, profitable result in a movie or a video game because of itself. What other questions? Okay.
So would everybody please join me in thanking Mr. Roberson here for sharing his information?